going to explore what it means and what it takes to build a 21st century workforce. For that, I'm pleased to welcome to Illinois State Senator Linda Holmes. She chairs the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. Please also welcome Mario Kratsch. He's the director of the Skills Initiative at the German-American Chamber of Commerce of the Midwest. And we're also delighted to have Jorge Ramirez here with us. He is president of the Chicago Federation of Labor. And back to lead the conversation, Steve Clemons.
Hello, everybody. I finally got my water. Amit Prachard, I want to just call out, you've got great socks on over there. I'd ask you to lift your leg up and show everyone, but I like to do it in fun things. My friends in workforce development, raise your hands again. Everybody in workforce, so I'm going to call on a couple of you here because this is what we're going to be discussing. Welcome. We're going to do this as a conversation, and thank all of you for being here. We're going to talk about different dimensions over the next hour or so. This first phase is about the people side, about workforce development, how to get it right, what partnerships can do. And then we're going to come in and talk a little bit about what the digital future looks like, how manufacturing is changing, and of course it includes people, but a little bit more on just sort of what's coming down the pike in the arena of innovation and technology. This workforce thing, as I mentioned earlier, really interests me because it used to be something in the 1990s that many people sort of sought to improve, tried to begin thinking about how to upskill workers and to connect them with opportunities. And I can just tell you from a policy perspective, at the national and sort of federal level, it was very frustrating. And so, Linda, I'm interested in how you were sharing with me today a vignette of why you're so committed to this, and you gave me a very interesting way in which you've changed the game when you begin to thinking about exposing people to a different workforce training experience.
It was obviously in my capacity as a state senator when you talk to different companies as well as talking to students who are getting out of college and finding out that the students getting out of school were saying that they were unable to find jobs. The businesses were saying they were unable to find qualified workers. And I thought, well, there's obviously some sort of a disconnect here. And it was Aurora University who came up with the idea to join with 4 of the other school districts in Aurora. Aurora has several school districts. In doing this, they decided they wanted to create a STEM program. The STEM program was for children in grades 3 through 8, so a much younger group than we're used to, because Aurora is obviously home of IMSA, the Illinois Math and Science Academy, which is high school. They formed this partnership school, and I needed to pass legislation to allow this because it was a completely new concept. So it was passing this legislation that created a partnership school. The partnership school then pairs up with local businesses. Mm-hmm. The businesses not only help the school in a financial aspect, but they also are creating the curriculum. So now these students are actually learning the skills that the companies are going to need in their workforce. And engaging them at that young of an age is very different because those students are not selected based on necessarily high academic performance as much as they are in interest in the STEM.
So that model works for you. You think it's promising.
I think it's very promising.
And I want to bring in a lot of folks here in a little bit to sort of hear what other experiences they have. But when you think about that model, the question I always have is it scalable? Is that model, is it an oasis unto itself, or is it something that can be copied and replicated in lots of other environments?
I think it can definitely be replicated. As a matter of fact, we were just talking about that with Aurora University. We really want this to be something that is replicated. We certainly shouldn't be the only ones doing this.
What do you think would enhance that replicability?
I think just now that the school has been up and going for, it's only been about a year and a half, is just finding out what's happening with that. And I think it's having those partners that are involved and making sure that they're getting out there, getting the word out there of how much this is actually being a benefit.
Jorge, you work in the labor business, in a big part of the labor business. You're with the American Federation of Labor, and you're on the union side of it. But I want you to take your union hat off for a minute. And I don't know if that's possible, but we're going to try it. Remember, you're on the record. But if you were to just be all powerful and sort of change the game for workers and skills and and getting rid of some of the dysfunction in the system that seems to be clogging things up, what would you do?
I would have a multifaceted approach, and I'm comfortable with taking my union hat off all the time. I'm a huge fan of all things Chicago, and I always want Chicago to make sure that we're doing well in many areas, including jobs and training and things like that. But we have to acknowledge some of the things that are challenges for us. The mayor talked about a lot of those. Some of the things that he didn't get into as much were all the efforts towards pre-K, early learning and things like that on the education front. Because what you have in a lot of these areas are problems where, you have a great number of students that are finishing high school and now they're going into college, and they're not prepared, and that's a problem. On the other hand, you have employers who, different ways to look at manufacturing as well. You have your set it and forget it type manufacturing where low skilled, a lot of those jobs have left. But a lot of the higher skilled jobs are still here and need a pipeline of employees that are skilled enough to take those jobs. And I'll jump right back into the question, but I have to digress for a moment and tell you that about 15 years ago, the Chicago Federation of Labor partnered with the Center for Labor and Community Research, now known as Manufacturing Renaissance Council, to do a study of the area. And what they found out was that about 80% of that workforce was set to retire 10 or 15 years, most of the baby boomers. And a lot of them were in these high-skilled manufacturing jobs. The bad economy has done us a little bit of a favor in that they're not ready to retire yet because they're still recovering from the recession. But the pipeline to fill those jobs is going to be even harder pressed. We'll be harder pressed to fill that pipeline with skilled folks that can do that. So I think one of the examples that I can give you to hit your question on the head, and I think this is something, you mentioned scalable. This is something that is scalable. We took a high school that closed, partnered with community, partnered with the Manufacturing Renaissance.
High school
with
here?
labor. Yeah, Austin Polytech. It's one of the high schools that the mayor was talking about. I believe he didn't name it, but that's one of the high schools that's there. And what they did was Austin High School was scheduled to be closed by the city. They went in there and partnered with over 80 different employers, and 50 at the time. I think the partnership through Manufacturing Connect is up to about 80 different partners now. And they put in the machinery, they put in the folks that can teach, and what's happening now is the students are going through high school with their high school curriculum, but also getting their NIMS certifications, their metalworking standards certifications, and have had a great deal of success in doing so. One of the interesting things that happened was, and I'm sure there's a group of folks that would like to take credit for this, but it really goes to one of the parents of one of the students who was enrolling their child and then said, hey, I wish I could get this kind of training. It's hard to find a job. And a bell went off with a few of us, and we're like, we need to make sure that we're using and reallocating trade adjustment assistance dollars and things like that to train the parents at night. Children go off 3:30, 4 o'clock in the daytime. You keep the machines on, hire another trainer. You train the parents in getting their NIM certifications. They can get them more quickly, and then start to fill, some of those posts in the workforce that are needed. So this is working. It's something that can continue to work. The scalability is completely possible. This is going to come down to political wherewithal and things like that.
How does what are the tension points in that? Not to be an ad for Siemens, but Siemens is giving this major software grant to schools in Chicago. They've done different sorts of grant with the software called PLM to other parts. And when you get into it, you sort of look at that pipeline question of people who used to hold the jobs at one generational level, and you're looking at millennials coming in with a very different set of skills. Yeah. You realize the whole game is changing just in terms of, one, what's needed, what people are expected to do, but also if you get out to talk, I hope we have some millennials here and we won't be embarrassed. Any millennials here? Yeah, a couple, thank God. Yeah, there's one back there too. But these folks, as I understand it from looking at data and research, they may not want to go work for a company for a very long period of time. They're much more comfortable with a very different sort of high pivot, jump from job, what people are calling the 1099 economy. And I'm just interested in, now you can put your union hat back on, and whether or not the answers that you folks have on the union side are ones that enhance this question, get in the way of some of the opportunities you saw, whether they're just very different tracks and not relevant. No, because it does seem generationally something's changing. And when you think about upskills and you think about the software and digital revolution coming, it is going to come with a very different kind of worker, different kind of person, organizing themselves in different ways than they used to.
Right. I think that the gig economy and things like that,
Right.
When you get into that, it's happening now. It's happening right in front of us. One of the things that's interesting, though, about take the NIM certifications, for example. Those are completely transferable. It's not one employer training the way they do things. They'll do the nuance training when they get there. But these base level certifications are absolutely necessary and completely transferable. You have a very transferable population that you're talking about. But what folks need to understand is that generation, the millennial generation, is really big on innovation, is really big on creativity. High-skilled manufacturing and innovation go hand in hand. Your next big idea is going to come from that world. So I think what we try to do in the school that we open is talk about working, talking about we have a socioeconomic angle to it. These jobs have heavy multipliers, 5 to 7 multipliers in an economy. But we also focus on ownership. We tell these folks that, hey, we don't just want to teach you how to work at a plant one day. We want you to start with the soft skills and the hard skills that you need to make sure that you can own a company one day. When that next innovation occurs and you're there to see it, you know what to do with it. That's completely possible for those worlds to exist. And they'll have to change. And everybody wants things to get better, but nobody likes change. But they are changing whether we like it or not.
Linda, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say the one thing that concerns me, and actually prior to what I do now, I had a construction background. So my concern is that we were going to end up in this society where we're pushing kids so quickly just to go into college instead of into any skilled trade, that I don't want to end up in a world where there are no plumbers. I don't want to live in a world where there are no skilled electricians or people to build our houses or repair our roads. And that's sort of the worry, is we need to make sure that stays as a viable employment option for people who don't necessarily want to go to school and get that 4-year degree, but want to work in a skilled craft.
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion about a diversity of educational tracks. Eduardo Padron of Miami-Dade College has about 130,000 students, is that about right? In and out, with a lot of different, from 4-year to mid-year to community college. But let me just bring Mario in. Mario, you've been here for a year. Is that about right? You've been here for 1 year?
Yeah,
in
October
Chicago from the German-American Chamber of Commerce. You've got a skills initiative that you're running here. He has a very interesting background. He was raised near Leipzig in East Germany, and so you've gone through a lot of cultural changes and shifts. So how's the one of how the entry to Chicago, how does Chicago compare? But give us your insights into this question of sort of technically and thinking about building a smart infrastructure to get job training, work training moved in a different track. Tell us what you've been doing.
Right. So basically, obviously there seems to be something working in Germany back then, because there is a workforce development system, including the apprenticeships, and this is actually what I also would like to focus on here, because it's working in Germany. We're still an export-driven.
I don't want you to talk to me. I want you to talk to Amit way in the back.
Here we go.
A little louder voice.
Export-driven company facing the same issues. How do we get the skilled workforce we need, basically? And this is the same questions that a lot of those companies have here. There has been here in the United States some sort of a disconnect between what the shop floor reality is and then what high school, college reality is. So we've been approached by a couple of companies that said, hey, listen, we have that perfect system back in Germany. Let's try to do something here in the States that gets as close as possible to that. So we did, basically. We developed an apprenticeship program, which is running 3 years and then a 2 years employment guarantee. And those companies...
to say that a little bit more slowly?
Yeah.
The how
apprenticeship
many years
program
for what
is
and how
3
many
years
years
of an apprenticeship, your 3 years an apprentice, and then you get 2 years of a employment guarantee. Not talking so much about the nitty-gritty details of that, but what those companies want to do basically is they want to reconnect with high schools and colleges, because it's not enough for the companies to talk to colleges and to influence the curriculum a little bit, then still you end up with people that might not be trained enough.
How many companies are participating?
Right now we have 8 companies participating, and we started this August. And those companies pay a lot of money in there. They've got skin in the game. They finance all of that. They cover tuition. They pay hourly wages, and that shows actually the commitment those companies are willing to be a partner in the whole thing. in
And so they're
developing.
taken on essentially as apprentices.
Sure. Basically, you're being taken on as an apprentice. The main target group actually is high school graduates, and it also allows you to get those kids in as early as possible and to train the skills you need. Actually, they send those kids to college too, so they get their associates.
I was going to say, talk about the one thing you mentioned to me
Perfect.
earlier that I thought was the most wonderful thing for so many parents to
Right.
hear is that there is no college debt fund.
The thing why there's companies, and when I talk about the companies and us, we always do what the companies want us to do, so it's not something that we come from the outside and develop that. So the companies said, hey, listen, if we talk apprenticeships, we have a problem here, because actually an apprenticeship is still some sort of a bad thing. Yeah, you got to go to college, no matter what college, but you got to go. So the company said, hey, listen, we have to make it more attractive, so we have to include the college. So next to the apprenticeship, you are being sent to college, get your associates. And then the company said, hey, listen, still there is a hurdle because you will end up with debt. Who's going to pay the tuition? So those companies invest in tuition as well, and they cover tuition. And that after 3 years.
How many dropouts do you have?
A couple of those programs are running here in the States already. Michigan just one. There is 95 students in there so far, one dropout after the first 2 weeks.
Only one.
So only one. And that shows actually a huge commitment from the companies, and also a huge commitment on those being an apprentice there. So what you do actually is you grow your own workforce. And you grow them, you train them, referring to the needs you have as a company, but still you follow some basic guidelines of manufacturing. And when you talk about scaling all of that, there's two interesting things. What we do here in the United States, when it comes to those apprenticeships, actually is being done in, right now, 40 countries worldwide, where companies approach the German American or the German abroad chambers, whatever, and say, hey, listen, we need that as well. So talking India, Mexico, whatever, because issues are the same everywhere. And also scaling here in the United States is not just possible. Actually, our program has been awarded financial funding by DOL, to scale that program throughout Illinois, to get more companies participating, to get more colleges participating, and finally to open new, I like the idea of career opportunities for, high school graduates or whomever. And the good thing about that too is you can take your credits from the associates, at least here in Illinois, and go on towards a 4 years degree, become an engineer, whatever.
The other day, Secretary of Labor Thomas Perez was telling us that the money that the Obama administration's put aside to incentivize and create more opportunities for apprenticeships is going to be a lot greater. Hillary Clinton's first economic proposal was about apprenticeships in her campaign. So it's definitely in the mix, but if you look at the absolute level of apprenticeships out there in terms of the job space and the training space, it's really tiny. And so I want to challenge the audience right now. Who in my workforce development crowd, friends out there, has what they think to be one of the coolest oases in the game of partnerships and workforce? Just put your hand. Who thinks they've got a really cool shop? Right here. Okay. Run a mic to him. So I'm interested in this discussion of workforce development. As you're hearing it, we've discussed, what are the elements that we're missing in this conversation that you think are vital in getting a workforce equation, a workforce training module in the right place?
Well, I can tell you from...
and what's your name, by the way?
My name is Bobby Wise. I'm a career coach at the National Able Network with their Veterans Forward, the Veterans Employment Program.
Yeah.
I can tell you that we have a program in-house called the IT Career Lab. It's a 14-week course, and unlike a lot of these fast-track schools, they do come with certifications, CCNA, Microsoft certifications, and we have developed really good relationships in the private sector with companies that will take on our graduates and help them get some on-the-job experience and get paid to do so. We get some help from the federal government to do that.
So these are sort of apprenticeship light.
It's not an apprenticeship with a particular company, but it is an apprenticeship within a particular industry.
I see.
And it does result in the certifications that will help build a career.
Okay.
And for that reason, we don't get our funding from the private sector. We get ours from the federal government. We are, federally funded and through charitable donations. But it is good to see companies such as Siemens taking that responsibility to bring on, to provide for more training and more certifications to provide for yourself for a better workforce. Obviously, that increases the training throughout the pool. But I think this is something that does require some public sector investment to ensure that that labor pool as a whole grows and not simply within very specific niche industries. I like the fact that our graduates can work in anywhere in the IT industry.
Yeah.
But once again, thank you for the work that
Before you
CEDA's
sit
doing.
down,
Yeah.
and I want to go to another person maybe on this side of the room who's got a cool workforce operation, but Mayor Emanuel mentioned human resource departments and needing to crack through. And just throughout this industry, I find particularly if you have veterans or people that are non-traditional or second chance folks, that breaking through on those HR departments is tough. Have you been able has that been a resistance point for you, or have you had better success than others?
Developing the relationships with HR departments is one of the most important parts of what we do. We can provide the job search training, the job skills training all day long, but if 80% of all hires go to the known candidate, that's one of the biggest things we push in our workshops. So developing that network within our organization, helping our clients develop those relationships on their own is hugely important. And without those relationships, the hires don't happen.
Do we have anyone here from Daly doing workforce? No one here from Daly. No one. Yes, we do. Someone pointing. Where? I would love to get, since you've been mentioned so often today, I'd love to get a quick perspective from you on how you look at these workforce training initiatives for the next generation of worker.
Well, I think it's really getting young kids interested, as the mayor said, in a career path in manufacturing. And part of that is a 2-year degree at Daly College that we offer, but it's also that degree transitions into a 4-year degree for our students at IIT. They have a hybrid bachelor's in industrial technology and management. So it's really showing them the industry as a whole. We recently were at FabTech here last week, the big fabrication show, and Celerio High School in Chicago, close to Daly, brought out about 10 to 15 students just to look at the shop, not the shop floor, excuse me, but the trade show floor, seeing companies not just from the U.S., but from Germany, from Japan and Europe. So it's giving them a broader view of the opportunities in manufacturing.
And are you finding it's working?
It is. We're starting to get more and more young kids in our program.
Okay, now somebody over here, and then we'll go back to all of you. I'm not going to stop yet. Sorry. Anybody in the workforce? This gentleman right here in the middle. With the beard. Aren't you a workforce guy? Yes. I saw your hand go up. No, the gentleman here with the glasses. Yes.
So my name is.
I was paying attention to the hand. So,
okay, good. No,
yeah.
I'm just saying. I work in economic development in the Chicago Southland, the area south of Cook County. In our economic development work, we have really seen the necessary to combine general economic development with workforce training.
Right.
So our area has something called the County Manufacturing Partnership, which is a collection of 4 community colleges in our region with the municipalities that we have in our area with about 70 companies. So we certainly share the idea that we have to create relationships with manufacturing companies to work with workforce. But what also we've found is this connection to overall general economic development, so that we can bring to companies not just workforce, but also infrastructure investments, roads, rail access that helps companies grow. So certainly the ideas that we are talking about here, we certainly also work closely in Cook County. The Bureau of Economic Development for county itself has really become a major player as well in our area. So certainly we have to try to see how do we work together as a region to create workforce opportunities and entrepreneurship opportunities in our region as well.
Thank you so much. Let me just ask you, what has been have you been in this business for a while?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's been the biggest change, say, over the last 10, 15 years that has hopefully improved what you do?
I think the manufacturing companies themselves have realized that they have a role to play in creating the workforce itself that can move into the area. Manufacturing companies can no longer just wait for us to create the workforce. They have to play a role. I think it's our obligation to show the companies a route to do that. So I think that's the thing our region has tried to do, is to be able to create that kind of methodology where companies can see that they have an opportunity to change and affect the workforce itself, but they've got a role to play. They just can't wait. And I think the big change has been many of the companies that we work with are indeed finding that to be true.
So just to wrap this up, it's been fascinating. 3 snapshots. All 3 took this in a different direction, but one of the consistent things was that quality of network, the quality of relationships, getting the right stakeholders, getting enthused students, et cetera, who were going to drive through the process. And so I just want to present you the same question. If you were to be here 5 to 10 years from now and looking back on what we will have needed to achieve in terms of getting our people better prepared for a very different sort of industry and different economy in the future, what thing do you most want to change, Linda?
I don't know. It's a fascinating thought simply because we know that so many of the kids today are going to be doing jobs we can't even conceive of right now. I mean, as much as our generation never thought anybody would be working with cell phones, for example. I think it's just I think the most important thing, and I think it was pointed out by some of your audience members, as well as by the Chamber, is going to be that buy-in by the companies to take a very active role in being able to get the type of employees and to help in that educational process in order to create the type of employees they need in their industries. And they're going to be the only ones that can keep up to date and have it on the most cutting edge with technology as it changes, is because they're working with it every day.
Mario?
I would be very happy if we could have a sort of a similar situation just like back in Europe or Germany especially, where more than half of high school graduates start an apprenticeship first before going on to college, university, whatever. Because that's actually what the foundation is when you talk about workforce development.
Jorge, final word.
Yeah, I like the continued effort between the Chicago Public Schools and the city colleges. I think that's a scale and a model that can work if taken to scale. And it's, I think in 5 to 10 years, you can start to see if the program runs the way it could, you will have enough students that you can start to put through that pipeline, go on to get their 2-year degree, then 4-year degree through the partnership. But then you could also have the evening to train the folks that are out there now looking for work. Those machines don't know what time of day it is, and you can run them at night as well as you can during the day. And it's just another opportunity to train. I just think you can put a big dent in that problem. And I think in 5 years from now, you can really have, if it's spread out properly, you can have the companies engaged in the local schools. You can have those schools feed into the city colleges into 4-year, and they can earn while they learn, and they can have careers. Everybody wins.
Well, I want to thank all of you. I asked all 3 of them to tell me something fun about them that wasn't on the resume. Jorge told me he had, 4 kids or something?
4 boys.
4 boys into hockey. So he's either trying to save the labor world or at hockey games. And, of course, Mario told me his story of coming from East Germany to sort of, the fuller Germany and then to here. And so thank you very much for bringing your experiences from there. And Linda has become a running fanatic just very recently. She wasn't until, just a few months ago.
Yeah, at my age.
Yeah,
really,
So
who would have
anyway,
thought?
well, you're so young. Anyway, it's great to have you here. Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Linda Holmes, Mario Kratsch, Jorge Ramirez. Thank you so much.
Thank you.